Hey JCA, happy Sunday. Hope you're all having a great weekend. Today I'm cooking for you this fun dish that I wanted to point out a few different things about. Number one, batch cooking. This is the best way to have food prepared throughout the week, whether you want it for lunches or for dinners. This is a really great way to prep in advance, take a few hours on a Sunday, and then not have to worry about it for the rest of the week. The other thing about this particular recipe that I'm going to be cooking, I'm going to be pointing out throughout the time that I'm cooking the different ways that I'm going to help you save money. So we all are on a budget, and I'm going to be particularly pointing out the things that I do to prevent wasting of food, to choose foods that are higher quality but still save the money that I can on them. So that's another thing. And then the last thing, of course, I always talk about the health aspect. So why is this dish healthy for us? All the benefits that we're gonna get from eating this meal. So what I'm making is pepper steak. You already can see all the different colors that I have, and instead of mixing everything together the way I normally do, I kept everything in separate columns here on the tray so that you can see exactly what ingredients I'm using and all the beautiful colors. So I have mushrooms over here on the left, I have broccoli in the middle, and I have all different color peppers over here on the right. So the benefit of doing this is, number one, we're getting nutrient diversity. So all the different colors represent different vitamins and minerals that our bodies need. So the more we can try to include all different colors in our diet, the more we are ensuring that we're getting all the vitamins and minerals, healthy proteins and fats that our bodies need to function appropriately. So you already can see all those different colors that I'm using. And then over here is our steak. So I often talk about choosing grass-fed and grass-finished meats. And the reason that I do that is because when animals are fed grass and they are left out on the pasture to graze at their own leisure, those animals will have healthier meat. The reason is because they are higher in omega-3 fatty acids, which is the anti-inflammatory nutrient that you may have heard of that we get when we eat fatty fish. So those animals that are treated better, that are fed better food, and are able to graze freely on the pasture, they definitely have a healthier type of meat. And so higher in omega-3 fatty acid and lower in omega-6 fatty acid. But the benefit, so what I wanted to talk about here about choosing foods on a budget, obviously we all know that grass-fed and grass-finished meats are a higher price. I do believe that this will save us money and quality of life in the long run by choosing to invest in higher quality meats. However, if we do have to really be careful at this time, what we can do is choose less expensive cuts of meat. And instead of choosing the more expensive pieces like the filet mignons and the more expensive types and cuts of meat, we can choose the less expensive. So right here I have steak tips. And as long as we know how to cook them appropriately, when this is finished, this is going to be so tender. It is going to cut with a fork practically. And so as long as you know how to cook them the right way, you can save money. You can choose the more expensive, high quality meats, but then pick the less expensive cuts of meat and cook them appropriately so that we're really getting the best of both worlds. So let me get started. I am going to be using my Instant Pot for this. So batch cooking, I talked about, is a great way to prepare food in advance and have it for the rest of the week and just not have to worry about cooking every single day of the week. So the Instant Pot or a crock pot are both great tools for batch cooking because you can make a lot of food. There's a lot that comes out of here that you can easily put into separate containers for the rest of the week. So if you don't have an Instant Pot, I'm going to be explaining how you can use a crock pot to make the same exact dish. So first, with an Instant Pot, you turn it on. I am going to turn it on to saute just to start, because in the very beginning, I'm just going to be putting the meat into the Instant Pot just to brown it. And if you are using a crock pot, then you can do this on the stovetop first, just to brown the meat, and then you can just transfer it over to the crock pot once it's browned. Another health benefit of using these types of cooking is that slow, moist cooking is especially healthy for us. When we cook foods, let's say on a barbecue or at very high temperatures with not enough moisture, then it does normally get that caramelization. And as much as we love that taste, I know it's a great flavor, that is not always the most healthy for us. The blackened portion of the meat is a little bit damaging to our cells. So when we can use long, slow, moist cooking like we do with an Instant Pot or a crock pot, or putting things in the oven at a low temperature for a long period of time, that's really the best way to cook. So I already turned this on, so I want to get something in there before anything burns. And what I'm using here, this is not what I wanted. I wanted this. So to tweak this recipe a little bit and have it taste a little bit more like the Chinese takeout sort of pepper steak that you might order, I'm changing some of the ingredients that I normally use. So instead of using avocado oil and ghee, I'm actually using some sesame oil. Sesame oil has an awesome flavor. You know, it just a little bit goes a really long way. So I'm only going to use like a big spoonful and a half just to coat the bottom of the pot, and I already smell that flavor. Before I put the meat in, I'm just going to coat one layer of seasoning on the top of the meat with salt. And this time I'm gonna go a little lighter on the seasonings because I normally just have like 20 different ones that I love and I use every one of them. But today I really am looking to have this have a unique flavor, and I don't want just a whole bunch of 20 seasonings. I'm really just gonna stick with salt, pepper, some garlic, onion, mustard, and ginger. I think I do have some chili powder. So garlic, onion powder, some mustard, ginger, that will really give it that really yummy flavor of like sort of that Asian style cooking, chili powder, and then I just didn't get my mustard over here. Okay. So then once I have the one layer of seasoning, my sesame oil is definitely heated up already. I am going to, one second, get my tongs here. Where are they? Oh, here they are. Okay, so I'm gonna get the seasoned side down in that, you already hear how hot that oil got as it was sitting here. Ooh, it smells so good in here already. I love it. And then once this is seasoned side down, I will season the other side. And like I said, if you do not have a Instant Pot, you can do the exact same recipe using a crock pot. And I would brown the outside of the meat on the stove top first in some sesame oil and these seasonings that I mentioned. And then you can transfer everything over into the crock pot once you've browned the outside of the meat. So I'm going to get this in here. If I find that it needs a little more oil, I could either add a little bit more sesame oil or I could add some avocado oil, just depending on how, because that sesame oil is very, very flavorful. And you just don't want it to be overpowering in your meal. Okay, And the other thing that I'll mention about the sesame oil is that, you do have to be careful about the types of oils that you use. I don't normally use a lot of seed oils, so like cottonseed or sunflower seed, or even vegetable oil and canola oil. Those oils are highly refined and modified, genetically modified in the United States, and unfortunately, when that happens, the oil itself is just not very helpful for you. In fact, it's very high in omega-6 fatty acids, which is that inflammatory nutrient that I mentioned before. So for the sesame oil that I chose here, I made sure to pick one that was unrefined and non-GMO. And so that's at least closer to a more healthful oil. The best that I could do under the idea that I'm still eating a seed oil. And we don't use as much of it either, just a small amount really goes a long way. So I'm okay with that. But for the most part, choosing avocado oil, a high quality olive oil, coconut oil, and ghee, those are really the ones that I recommend the most often. So right now I'm seasoning the other side of the meat, which is with salt and pepper, garlic, onion, chili powder, ginger, and mustard. Those are the ones that I was using. I guess I am using more than I promised, but it's not, at least it's not 20. Okay, so I think that this probably is going to need a tiny bit more oil just to make sure it doesn't stick. And then I'm going to turn the meat over. So right now, just as a reminder, I'm just browning the outside of the meat, and I actually am going to take it out of the Instant Pot and then put in some of my other ingredients to let those saute a little bit on the bottom. And then I'll put everything together, close it up, and we'll be done. So, like I said, if you don't have an Instant Pot, then you can brown these on the stovetop in a pot and then transfer them over into a crock pot if you have that. So right now this is on saute. That's the setting that I have my Instant Pot on. So it gets really hot, really quick. So just browning the outside in some sesame oil to get that really rich, nutty flavor. And then, as I mentioned before also, if you are trying to choose higher quality meats like grass-fed and grass-finished, because they are higher in the omega-3 fatty acids and lower in omega-6, rather than spending that extra money on the more expensive cuts of meat, you can spend the extra money on choosing grass-fed and grass-finished, but then choose a less expensive cut of meat. So these are steak tips, much less expensive than some of the more expensive pieces. And as long as you know how to cook them, which is this really slow, moist, for a long time cooking method, then you can really invest in higher quality meats, and then get the health benefits that you want, but don't spend on the cut. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, looks like we're just about right, and so I'm gonna take all of those out and put them on a plate. And then I'm going to talk about the rest of the ingredients. Okay, so right when this comes out, I'm going to put in my garlic. So garlic, chopped garlic is really one ingredient. Chopped garlic and onion is a combination of ingredients that not only are full of health benefits, but is a delicious flavor to add to your food. So I'm gonna do that. And then the other idea to do with an Instant Pot, because of how hot this gets, don't feel like you're under pressure because everything is gonna burn. You can literally just shut it off. You can say, okay, I need a minute to get my sauce ready. I'm not gonna be able to keep up with how fast this is cooking in here. So just shut it off and then take a breath and go to the next thing that you need to do. But because I had prepared most things before this started, I can get that in here really quickly. This is garlic, chopped garlic. If I had ginger root in the house, the whole ginger root, then I also would have chopped in a little bit of ginger. That combination of the garlic and the ginger is a great one for this Asian style of cooking that I'm having right now. The garlic literally just needs a minute to get like a little bit more tender. You do not want your garlic to burn, and you smell it. As soon as you smell that really rich, delicious garlic smell, you just know it's ready. And so the next thing I'm gonna stick in here is my onions. That's gonna saute in the garlic. And I'm starting to feel like I wanna add a little bit more fat. So instead of more of that sesame oil, I think I'm just gonna go with a little avocado oil this time, just to coat the pan and make sure everything is not gonna stick. And then the other thing that I always talk about too is just remembering to season each layer of food. So we've already seasoned the meat. I have garlic and onion, and if you have in the house ginger root, that would be sauteing in here next. And the other thing is, because this is going to be cooking for so long with the pot closed, it doesn't really have to brown that much. This is all going to get so tender over time that I'm not going to be too worried about letting this cook for a really long time. Normally, if you want your caramelized onions, then you might let it sit a little longer. But because this is a little bit of a different sort of setup with the Instant Pot, it's going to be cooking a long time. It's going to get very tender. I'm not too worried about the caramelization right now. So what I am going to do is I'm going to actually listen to my own advice, and I'm going to shut this off for a second. So just cancel it so that I have time to do everything else that I want to do. The first thing is that once I mix everything together in here, I want it to have a really good sauce. So the sauce that I'm going to be using today is going to be a combination of rice wine vinegar. This is just an organic rice wine vinegar that I got at Publix. And I'm probably going to do about 1/4 of a cup of that. That's going to be an awesome flavor, that Asian style cooking flavor, but that it's also going to clear up, it's going to scrape up all the yummy goodness at the bottom of the pot. So that's going to be a good add. I'm going to put some mustard in there. I love the flavor of mustard, probably about a tablespoon. So I have about 1/4 of a cup of rice wine vinegar, a tablespoon of mustard, probably about a tablespoon of coconut aminos. Coconut aminos is my replacement for soy sauce. So coconut aminos is a great replacement. It tastes just like soy sauce, and it doesn't have some of the genetically modified additives, preservatives, gluten, things that soy does contain. So that's why I choose coconut aminos instead. And then I'm gonna do 1 tablespoon, or probably only, I'd say a teaspoon of honey. Yeah, that's plenty. Wow, that might, maybe even a little less than a teaspoon. Probably like 1/2 to 3/4 of a teaspoon. That's plenty, because that's pretty sweet. Okay, so I'm gonna mix that all together. And then I'm also going to season all of my vegetables so that once I put it into the pot, they're already seasoned, so I don't have to worry about that. So this is a great combination of the rice wine vinegar, the soy sauce, the mustard and the honey. And then, you know, it actually might not be a bad idea to add like a little just drip of the sesame oil. Yeah, wow, that's good. Okay. All right, so now, like I said, I'm going to season my vegetables, and thankfully, I'm not using as many as always, so I should be able to do this pretty quickly. Salt and pepper. So I have my mushrooms, my broccoli, my peppers, and the great thing about this is I'm getting all these different colors. The more colors that you get, the more you are guaranteed to get all the different vitamins and minerals that your body needs. Another thing, I promised I would talk about cooking on a budget. So another way to make sure that you're not gonna have leftovers that you have to throw out is by using every single part of the vegetables that you buy. So for example, with the broccoli, I have the stalks and the stems and the florets. They're all part of this. And then whatever part that I actually can't cook, let's say there's stems that are just inedible, I put them all together in a little bag that I keep in the freezer, and I use those parts for when I'm making soups or you know, some pureed sauces or something like that. So I really do try to make sure to use every single part of everything that I buy. That's another way to try to save money. And then a little just dabble of avocado oil on all this to make sure all the seasonings sort of stick. I don't even know if that's a thing, but that's what I envision in my mind. Okay, so I'm gonna put this back on. So back on saute. And then just to get it hot again, because I would like to add my sauce first so that it can scrape up all the goodness at the bottom of the pot. And then I'm gonna add back the meat, add back the vegetables, and then the very last thing is just to add just enough water. Instant pots do need a little bit of water just to make sure that nothing burns. For this in particular recipe, I'm really gonna try to add just enough because I don't wanna have like it to be very soupy. I really just want it to be just moist enough with some sauce, but I don't wanna have like tons of sauce so that it's more like soup. So I'm just gonna add enough just to make sure that the Instant Pot works. So if you are not using an Instant Pot and you're using your crock pot, you might not even need, I think I would saute the meat, just like I explained. I would saute the garlic, but then everything else you can just put into the crock pot and just cook it all together. So saute the meat and the garlic on the stovetop and then put everything into the crock pot. And then you can cook it the same exact way that I'm doing here. Okay, so I'm sticking the sauce in there, and then I do want to use like a little spatula to help scrape up all the goodies at the bottom of the pot. Okay, and now because I've seasoned every layer of my meal, I know that when it comes out, it's just gonna have such a great flavor because I've already, you know, taken care of all the seasoning that it needs. So all the different color vegetables, I have my florets and my stems of the broccoli, and then I'm gonna add my meat. And the way that I'm gonna serve this later is with some rice, because that way I will get my 50% of the plate being vegetables. I will get 25% of my plate being the protein, which is the meat. And then the last 25% of the plate will be the rice, which is my source of resistant starch. So I always talk about the benefits of resistant starch being the fiber that feeds the good bacteria in our gut. So I always recommend that you construct your plate where 50% of it is fruits and vegetables, 25% is protein, and then the last 25% is that source of resistant starch, which could be rice or beans or potatoes or squash. In the morning, it might be oatmeals or banana. Plantains is another one, quinoa. Those are all sources of resistant starch that could be the last 25% of your plate. Okay, so now it's time for the meat. And that meat was also already seasoned. It was sauteed in sesame oil because I'm trying to really enhance that nutty Asian flavor. And then I'm just gonna add enough water so that it doesn't burn. And even if you do not add enough water, the worst thing that will happen is that this will give you, the Instant Pot will give you a little notification that it will say the word burn, but it really doesn't mean that anything terrible is happening except that there isn't enough liquid. So you just have to open it up again and pour in a little more liquid. So like I said, I'm trying to keep the liquid to a minimum, so I really just have enough to like sort of make quiet the pot. I think there's enough water in there. And then I'm gonna close that and put it on meat. The, let's see, the one that said about 15 minutes. So you make sure that this is closed so that it is gonna seal. So make sure the air, it's not going to, it's gonna, seal up tightly. And then you put it on meat. It'll be 15 minutes. And this meat will be so tender. It will literally cut with a fork. If you're using a crock pot, same thing will happen. Just brown the meat on the stovetop then the garlic, and then put everything together into the crock pot and do the exact same thing. So I hope that was a fun cooking video for you today. I can't wait to eat this for dinners throughout the week or even lunches. We did some batch cooking. We cooked all the different colors, and we also saved some money by choosing less expensive cuts of meat, but we still picked the grass-fed and the grass-finished. So higher quality meat, but just less expensive cuts. So I loved it. I hope you did too, and have a great week. I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.